Hey folks, this is Kalani. Blizzard just announced a whole bunch of updates coming down the content pipeline for the end of 2024 and pretty much the entire schedule for 2025. We have a release date for patch 1107 and a lot of information about patch 11.1, including the new zone that we'll be traveling to, new features and systems, and how seasonal rewards are going to change. There's a new customizable ground mount that we can turbocharge to go way faster than any other mount in the game, and we have a roadmap detailing the content schedule until the end of 2025, which includes a bunch of other patches and some crazy new features like player housing. Yes, player housing has been confirmed and it should release in the next year or so. There's a lot to talk about, so let's break it all down in this week's WoW news video. Now before we jump in, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. First up, we have a release date for the next content patch coming our way, patch 11.0.7. That is going to release on December 17th, so we were correct when we assumed it would have to go live before the holidays started to get those Winter Veil updates in. So that means we'll have some new content in just over a month's time and a new patch to play over the holiday season, so that's all very exciting. But a huge chunk of the news that we got in the direct livestream was focused on the next major content patch, 11.1, and we know a lot about where we're going and what kinds of new content are awaiting us. Patch 11.1 is called Undermine and we'll be heading down into the goblin capital of Undermine. This has some amazing potential. It's basically a giant goblin city and it's currently in the midst of a cartel war. I am very excited to explore this new zone and see what secrets it holds. We'll also be able to earn renown with the 4 different goblin cartels. We'll be able to align with one of the cartels and earn their favour to unlock new gameplay options and oodles of rewards. Now, the way this was initially worded made a lot of folks think it would be kinda like Covenants from Shadowlands, where you pick one cartel and you get locked into that choice, but thanks to some recent interviews we now know that will not be the case. The cartels will work kinda like the Azj-Kahet Pact system, so we can choose one cartel to work with maybe each week, but we won't be locked into any choices or locked out of any content, and you can earn reputation with every cartel as you progress. There will also be a zone-wide renown that progresses as you earn renown with each cartel, so there will be plenty of rewards to look forward to. One of the big ticket items in this new patch is a ground mount. Now before you write it off for not being a flying mount, this mount is going to be very different. It's basically a race car, and just like those old Need for Speed games, this new drive mount will be fully customizable and it will have stats that you can affect and change. Things like acceleration, max speed, handling, drifting. You get to customize those attributes to race around the city however you want. The entire zone has been built with this mount in mind, with roads specifically designed for zooming and racing. This mount is supposed to be able to go much faster than any other ground mount as well, so it will be very interesting to see how this all comes together. With such a strong focus on this drive mount, it's no surprise that we will not be able to fly in Undermine, so that is something else we're going to have to get used to. There will also be races for this new mount, similar to dragon riding races, so that's going to be very cool. I'm actually really excited for this mount, even though we'll be stuck on the ground. The races could be incredibly fun if they're put together well, and it's going to depend a lot on the zone and the layout, but this could be a very fun change of pace. 11.1 also introduces a new dungeon, Operation Floodgate. We'll be racing against a group of goblins who are attempting to blow a dam that would bring ruin to the Ringing Deeps. This will be a normal dungeon, not a mega dungeon that usually pops up in a 0.1 patch, which means it will be immediately available to play and it should only have 3 to 5 bosses. Another interesting twist is that this new dungeon will actually be included in the Mythic Plus rotation for Season 2 as well. Usually new dungeons wouldn't be included until later seasons, but again they were also usually mega dungeons that got split into 2, so perhaps that's why. The Season 2 rotation will have the new 11.1 dungeon, the 4 War Within dungeons that weren't used in Season 1, as well as the Mother Lode from Battle for Azeroth because, you know, goblin things. The last 2 dungeons were confirmed to be Theatre of Pain and the Workshop Wing of Mechagon, so we already know which 8 dungeons we'll be tromping through for the next 6 or so months when this patch goes live. We'll also see a new raid for Season 2, the Liberation of Undermine. This will be an 8-boss raid, and it starts in the streets of the city as we clear our way through the corrupt goblin bosses to finally reach Gallywix. We finally get to topple this greedy monstrosity, though I'm sure it won't be quite so simple. The clips we saw the raid look really cool, and I'm definitely excited to plunder the streets of Undermine. I'm sure there'll be a whole bunch of goblin-themed items and trinkets for us to get our hands on too. The delve system will also see a handful of changes and updates. We have 2 new delves to explore in the Undermine area, as well as a new Zekfia-style boss delve for Season 2, so there's another challenge to look forward to as well. Bran is going to see some updates, and we will be keeping Bran moving forward. Originally, the plan was to have a new companion for each season, but the dev team decided that wiping our progress with Bran would feel bad, and I kind of agree with that. Starting over from scratch would have felt pretty terrible. So we'll be taking Bran into Season 2, and we will have a tank option as well, so he'll be able to fill any role for you or your group. We will also see new goblin-themed curios to collect and upgrade. Hopefully they're powerful enough to change things up a little bit. And then we're also going to see a new arena map set right in the middle of the city. It's got kind of a Colosseum vibe going for it, so that's exciting too. But perhaps the craziest thing about all of this is that in one of the interviews, Ian mentioned that the PTR for 11.1 should start up before the end of the year. So we have 11.07 to keep us busy on live servers, and we'll have the first build of 11.1 to test before the year comes to a close. So we won't have too long to wait to see how all of this content looks in-game, so that's all very exciting indeed. Another huge announcement is the addition of player housing. This was initially teased with a very cool video, then confirmed very shortly afterwards in various interviews. We don't have a lot of information about what this will include just yet, or how exactly it's going to look, besides the fact that it is a planned feature and it will be nothing like garrisons. Garrisons were not designed to be player housing, so this will probably have a lot more focus on things you can show off, like trophies or achievements, with a lot of customization for how you want your space to look. The dev team did mention that they wanted to know what players want from the system, so be sure to give your feedback when we start to get a clearer picture of how this is all going to work. The feature will be a part of the next WoW expansion Midnight, but it might actually make it into the game before then. If we take a look at one of the updated roadmaps, we can see an icon all the way to the right hand side. It's a little house with a WoW icon, so it doesn't really take much guesswork to come to the conclusion that this is probably the player housing feature and its planned release date. This is the 2025 roadmap, by the way, so that means we should have access to player housing before the end of next year. But with player housing being tied to the Midnight expansion and it coming before the end of the year, does that mean the Midnight expansion itself will also arrive before 2025 is done? Or will housing be a part of an extended pre-patch situation? Either way, we'll be heading into Midnight sooner than we originally thought. Now we can do a bit more digging on this here timeline. The banner for 11.1 shows we'll be getting some warband updates as well as warband camp collections, so we may see some extra character select screen options coming our way. I am very excited to see how we end up unlocking those. In 11.15 we'll see some new content called Nightfall, so we'll probably be delving into some more shadowy void themed content. We'll also see Horrific Visions revisited, so that system could come back as it was or be remade for Xalatath instead of N'Zoth's influence. Either way, that's probably going to be some more solo content. Horrific Visions were timed challenge style scenarios with a lot of pesky affixes to deal with, so hopefully they improve upon the past iteration. We also know that 11.2 will introduce a new zone, new world events, another new dungeon and raid, open world content, and further warband updates. It also says we'll see a season's rewards refresh, which could mean an update to how things like Mythic Plus, PvP, and Delves reward loot or gear, or we could just see a new kind of seasonal reward to chase after. So that's all very exciting and interesting. Then we'll have the Midnight expansion full reveal sometime after that towards the end of summer, leading into 10.25, which also includes the 21st anniversary event, so that's probably landing sometime around October and November. A patch 11.27 is on the table, with the housing feature coming shortly afterwards. You may also notice that the end of the timeline here turns from the usual gold colour to a bright green. That green colour has really only been associated with one thing in WoW, the Legion, so why does the timeline turn green towards the end of the year? Could this indicate that we'll see something like a Legion remix event? The Mr. Pandaria remix event was very successful, and quite a fun change of pace. I know the dev team mentioned the Pandaria remix event, or at least its rewards, will return at one point or another, but I can't help but feel like that wouldn't be all too exciting for most players if we just had Pandaria again. Legion was an incredibly well received expansion. It has a lot of content that they could release and work through, and adding in some remix elements could be very fun indeed. So I think it's the perfect candidate for a remix event, which would be great to bridge the gap between the end of the War Within and the start of Midnight. Now, speaking of bridging that gap, it's important to note that we don't have any mention of a patch 11.3 or a Season 4 or an Awakened season, so Season 3 may be the last season for this expansion before we head into Midnight. The dev team have said several times that they're aiming for 18-month-long expansions, and if they achieve that, that means Midnight could launch sometime in February 2026. This roadmap covers almost everything up until that point, so we may not get an Awakened season this time. We could just be heading straight into the next expansion, which honestly I would prefer. Either way, we have a lot of content to look forward to this coming year. The dev team have also been keeping to a rough 2-month patch cycle. With 11.07 releasing in December, we could see 11.1 in February, and each patch just 2 months after the previous. That would fill up the entire year, and it seems to match up with certain milestones here. Either way, the dev team are committed to releasing consistent content across 2025. So that's pretty much everything to look forward to for Retail WoW or the War Within, but there are also many updates coming for other versions of WoW as well. This collection of 3 roadmaps is just for Classic WoW. There will be fresh Progression Classic servers coming in November that will go through the usual phases, including moving on to TBC towards the end of the year. So if you want to go back to Classic without Season of Discovery or the more recent expansions of Classic WoW, that will be an option very soon. Cataclysm Classic will move onto the Hour of Twilight patch, and Season of Discovery will enter Phase 7 in early 2025. Mr. Pandaria Classic will release in summer as well, so there are a lot of other versions of WoW to check out with a whole bunch of updates of their own if there's a lull in the retail roadmap. But that's everything we know about patch 11.1 and the other updates coming our way in 2025, so that's it for this video. What are you most looking forward to from next year's roadmap, and how do you feel about being locked to the ground again for patch 11.1? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to all of our members here on YouTube. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can find links in the description or click the join button just below the video. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful in any way, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you're always kept up to date. Thanks for watching, folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.